Okay, this is my audience here. I have my brother and my two parents for my persuasive speech. I decided to do my persuasive speech on education levels. The social problem that I wish to address is education levels in high schools across the state of Maine and the United States as a whole. The rhetorical purpose of my speech is to inform my audience about how much improvement is needed among these not only Maine schools, but the United States schooling education level in general as a whole. I feel personally that a professional board of SAT analysts would help dramatically increase the scores that these students are getting in not only Maine, but across the U.S. The scripture verse that I chose to go on with this is Ecclesiastes 7:12, which says, "For the protection of wisdom is like the protection of money, and the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom preserves the life of him who has it." This clearly goes along quite well for a pretty good example, because it shows how much Christ wants us to value education and wisdom in our lives, and how he wants us to put that in the forefront of many of our actions. This solution is redemptive because it is assisting people in educational reasons where they are clearly lacking in many different areas. So recently, the state of Maine received a C average grade for its high schools across the state. Education levels across the United States as a whole are also down. They recently received 17th place among multiple countries in the world in 2012. I personally have been through the schooling system in Maine and have taken the SATs 2 times. So I feel a panel of professional SAT analysts would help increase education levels and efficiency in Maine as far as education goes, and also the rest of the country. And I feel like this would happen by the panel of professional SAT analysts viewing SAT results from each individual school and finding solutions to weak areas that they each have. The 3 main points I have for my speech are the education levels of Maine in the U.S. are lower than they should be. A professional board of SAT advisors can help reverse these education trends, and how these solutions can also be implemented into the schooling system very quickly and easily. So education levels are lower, as I mentioned, in Maine and the United States as a whole. The state of Maine recently received an average grade of C in its high schools, as I mentioned. The Maine Department of Education released the average SAT scores for each junior class in each high school of the state, and that's how they came up with this number, this grading of a C. Some high schools in urban Maine also receive scores as low as Ds for their individual high schools. The United States as a whole finished 17th among multiple countries, as I mentioned, in the Huffington Post data that was released regarding 2012 education. So my solution to this is a board of professional SAT analysts who would first off get the scores from the high schools once they are completed SATs. Then they can assess the scores, each individual school, and go through one at a time for each, for Maine in particular. And then each other state could do that as they decide. And then from there, they can determine the weaknesses or strengths in the subjects of reading, math, or comprehension, which are all part of the SATs. And from this, they'll be able to recommend adjustments and send these back to the school. And in the perfect world, they would be able to send them back beginning of the summer, so then the supervising board of the schools could then overview the recommendations that were given to their specific school, and then they could make changes for the next year for the next upcoming class that is going to be taking the SATs for the next year. I feel like this new process would be much more beneficial and much smoother than the old process of schools not even doing anything about the previous year's scores, and I feel like schools all across the country can improve dramatically from this panel use. So obviously, after the speech, this is why I feel like a professional SAT board would help increase not only SAT levels, but education as a whole across the United States. And if you feel you're interested, obviously, in your children's education levels increasing, so it is equal to that of the tops of the world, I feel like you should look into this idea of a panel